The 1980s saw studios throwing around massive budgets like confetti at a New Year's party, and when these ambitious passion projects crashed harder than a stunt man without a safety net, Hollywood suits declared them worthless disasters and buried them in the vault of shame, completely missing the fact that some of the decade's biggest failures would become the most influential and beloved films of all time. Cutter's Way turns a simple murder mystery into a post-Vietnam nightmare where paranoia and trauma collide in the most uncomfortable ways possible. The plot follows drifter Richard Bone as he witnesses someone dumping a body in a Santa Barbara alley, suspects wealthy oil baron J.J. Cord of the crime, and gets dragged into his war-damaged friend Alex Cutter's obsessive quest for vigilante justice that ends with Cutter's house being bombed and his wife Mo killed in the explosion. What's absolutely fascinating about this production is that director Ivan Passer was making one of the first films to seriously tackle Vietnam veteran alienation, with John Hurd's Cutter representing the walking wounded who came home to a country that wanted to forget the war ever happened. Behind the scenes, United Artists had no idea how to market this dark, ambiguous thriller that refused to give audiences clear heroes or villains, originally releasing it under the generic title Cutter and Bone, before critics and word of mouth forced them to restore Passer's preferred title. The film became legendary for its moral complexity, where Jeff Bridges' Bone and Hurd's one-eyed, one-armed alcoholic Cutter blur the lines between heroism and vigilante obsession in ways that made mainstream audiences deeply uncomfortable. What makes this production even more remarkable is that it arrived during Reagan's optimistic 1980s, when Hollywood was pivoting toward feel-good blockbusters, but Passer insisted on exploring America's fractured post-war psyche through neo-noir cinematography and performances so raw they felt like therapy sessions caught on camera. The ambiguous ending, where Bone pulls the trigger during the confrontation with Cord, but the truth about his guilt remains uncertain, left viewers arguing about justice versus revenge long after the credits rolled. The Stunt Man transforms Hollywood filmmaking into a psychological hall of mirrors where reality becomes the most dangerous special effect of all. The plot follows Cameron, a fugitive who stumbles onto a World War I movie set and gets recruited by charismatic director Eli Cross to work as a stunt double, only to discover that Cross manipulates reality and illusion so masterfully that Cameron can't tell where the movie ends and real danger begins. What's absolutely insane about this production is that director Richard Rush spent nearly a decade trying to get the film made because studios couldn't understand his meta-commentary on filmmaking itself, where Peter O'Toole's Eli Cross represents both the godlike power and manipulative danger of directors who control reality on their sets. Behind the scenes, Rush was essentially making a movie about making movies, using the film within a film structure to question everything audiences believed about cinema, performance, and the nature of storytelling itself. The production became legendary for O'Toole's magnetic performance, as Cross, who shifts seamlessly from charming mentor to threatening puppet master, embodying the film's central themes about control and deception with such charismatic menace that viewers found themselves both fascinated and terrified by his character. What makes this even more brilliant is that Rush used actual stunt sequences to blur the line between staged action and real peril, forcing audiences to experience Cameron's confusion about what's real and what's performance, while commenting on Hollywood's willingness to sacrifice human safety for spectacular entertainment. The film's dark comedy and psychological complexity influenced later postmodern directors who wanted to explore the recursive nature of storytelling, proving that sometimes the most dangerous person on a movie set is the one holding the camera and calling action. 52 Pickup should have been John Frankenheimer's triumphant return to directing after years of television work, but instead it became a masterclass in how Hollywood's seedy underbelly could swallow even the most talented filmmakers whole. Harry Mitchell is a successful Los Angeles construction magnate, living what appears to be the perfect life until his extramarital affair with stripper Sini gets captured on videotape by three ruthless blackmailers who demand a six-figure ransom to keep his secret from destroying his reputation and his wife's burgeoning political career. So instead of paying up like a typical victim, Harry decides to fight back and dismantle the entire blackmail scheme on his own terms, navigating through the gritty world of strip clubs, porn theaters, and violent crime in 1980s LA. What makes this production absolutely wild is that Frankenheimer was working with Cannon Films during one of the most chaotic periods in both his career and the studio's history, dealing with their notorious low budgets and breakneck shooting schedules while trying to adapt Elmore Leonard's complex novel into something that wouldn't get butchered in post-production. Behind the scenes, there were constant creative tensions between Frankenheimer and Cannon executives over marketing priorities and distribution strategies, with the studio wanting to push the film as a sleazy exploitation thriller, while Frankenheimer was crafting a sophisticated neo-noir character study. John Glover's performance as the menacingly charismatic blackmailer Raimi became legendary among cult film enthusiasts, but word around the set was that his intense method acting approach made other cast members genuinely uncomfortable during those psychological torture scenes. The production shot in real grimy Los Angeles locations to maximize authenticity on their shoestring budget, which meant the cast was literally working in actual strip clubs and seedy neighborhoods where the line between fiction and reality got dangerously blurred. What's fascinating is how this commercial failure eventually became hailed as one of Frankenheimer's finest works, proving that sometimes the most troubled productions create the most authentic art. 8 Men Out proves that sometimes the most devastating scandals make for the most compelling cinema. But John Sayles had no idea his historically accurate baseball drama would ignite a firestorm of controversy that split America's pastime right down the middle. The film dramatizes the infamous 1919 Chicago White Sox scandal, where 8 star players including shoeless Joe Jackson, Eddie Cicotte, and Buck Weaver colluded with gamblers to intentionally lose the World Series, transforming American heroes into cautionary tales about greed, desperation, and the corrupting power of easy money, as these legendary athletes sacrificed their honor and careers for quick cash in a conspiracy that would forever stain baseball's integrity. What's absolutely insane about this production is how Sayles and his team conducted exhaustive historical research, consulting with baseball historians and primary source documents to ensure every detail was accurate, which meant they weren't just making a sports movie, but essentially putting America's most beloved myths on trial in front of audiences who worship these players as gods. The backlash was swift and brutal, with baseball purists and diehard fans absolutely livid that the film dared to portray their heroes as deeply flawed men who succumbed to temptation, leading to theaters and baseball strongholds across the Midwest and South, initially refusing to screen the movie because they feared riots from passionate fans who couldn't handle seeing shoeless Joe Jackson depicted as anything less than saintly. John Cusack and Charlie Sheen delivered career-defining performances as conflicted players torn between loyalty and survival, but the real drama was happening in newspaper editorial pages and radio call-in shows, where fans were genuinely debating whether Hollywood had the right to tell uncomfortable truths about American sports legends. Critics were split between praising Sayles for his unflinching honesty and attacking him for supposedly destroying the innocent magic of baseball, while the film sparked a broader national conversation about gambling, corruption, and the vulnerability of professional athletics to unethical influence that feels eerily relevant to modern sports scandals. The movie's legacy endures as both a masterpiece of historical filmmaking and a cultural lightning rod that forced America to confront the reality that even our most cherished heroes are human. Choose Me proves that sometimes the most sophisticated romantic dramas emerge from the seediest dive bars, but Alan Rudolph had no clue his jazz-soaked character study would become one of the most divisive cult films of the 1980s. Set in the neon-lit underworld of Los Angeles nightlife, the film follows Eve, a former call girl turned bar owner who's terrified of commitment after watching relationships crumble around her. Mickey, a mysterious drifter fresh out of a mental hospital who spins elaborate tales about being a spy, while pursuing Eve with awkward charm. And Nancy, a French radio talk show host who secretly becomes Eve's roommate while dispensing anonymous relationship advice to callers who have no idea she's just as emotionally lost as they are. What makes this production absolutely fascinating is how Rudolph crafted a film that completely rejected every Hollywood romance convention, focusing on mood and psychological texture rather than traditional plot mechanics, using a jazz-inflected score and dreamlike cinematography to create this surreal urban atmosphere where characters drift through emotional isolation like ships passing in a smoky night. The film's structure, shifting between intertwined perspectives of 3 women, all connected to Mickey, was so unconventional that distributors had no idea how to market it, leading to a limited release that initially confused audiences expecting either a straightforward romance or a typical noir thriller. Critics were split between praising its sophisticated exploration of fractured relationships and attacking it for being pretentious, while the movie's cult status grew through art house theaters, attracting audiences who craved adult-oriented cinema celebrating imperfection over tidy romantic resolutions. The Emerald Forest should have been just another environmental message movie, but instead John Boorman created one of the most visually stunning and culturally explosive films of the 1980s that nearly destroyed his relationship with his own son in the process. The plot follows American engineer Bill Markham, whose young son Tommy gets abducted by an indigenous Amazonian tribe called the Invisible People, and after years of searching through bureaucratic indifference and jungle dangers, Bill discovers that Tommy has completely assimilated into tribal culture, forcing him to confront the devastating clash between his role as a symbol of industrial progress and his love for a son who now belongs entirely to the forest. What makes this production absolutely insane is that Boorman actually cast his real-life son Charlie as Tommy, subjecting the kid to months of grueling on-location shooting deep in the Amazon rainforest where cast and crew battled tropical diseases, equipment failures, and the constant threat of injury while working with minimal safety protocols in one of the world's most dangerous environments. Behind the scenes, the film became a logistical nightmare as Boorman insisted on shooting entirely on location in Brazil, dealing with government bureaucracy and indigenous rights activists who were suspicious of yet another Hollywood production exploiting native cultures for Western entertainment. The production faced constant delays due to weather and equipment failures, while the film sparked massive controversy among advocates who accused Boorman of perpetuating noble savage stereotypes, even though he consulted extensively with Amazonian tribes for authentic representation. Withnail I should have been just another depressing British art house film about unemployed actors. But instead, Bruce Robinson created the most brutally honest portrait of friendship and failure that nearly never got made because producers thought it was too weird and depressing for audiences. Set in late 1960s Camden Town, the film follows two out-of-work actors, the flamboyant and self-destructive Withnail and the neurotic Marwood, who survive on a dangerous cocktail of alcohol, drugs, and escapist humor while enduring repeated unemployment and hopeless auditions, leading them to take a disastrous countryside holiday at Withnail's eccentric Uncle Monty's cottage, where everything goes spectacularly wrong. What makes this production absolutely fascinating is that Robinson wrote the script based on his own experiences as a struggling actor, creating Withnail based on his real-life friend Vivian Mackerel, who was known for his flamboyant and genuinely self-destructive personality, essentially turning his most traumatic memories into dark comedy gold. The film was shot on a shoestring budget of just £1.1 million, with a brutal 7-week shooting schedule, forcing Robinson to use real locations in Camden and the Lake District that were often genuinely cold and uncomfortable, adding authentic misery to every scene. Richard E. Grant's explosive debut performance as Withnail was so intense that Robinson had him drink vinegar instead of water during the lighter fluid scene to get those authentic horrified reactions, while the film's sharp, quotable dialogue became legendary among cult film enthusiasts. Despite bombing at the box office, the movie found new life through VHS rentals and became one of Britain's most beloved cult classics, proving that sometimes the most personal disasters make the most enduring. The Right Stuff should have been Hollywood's ultimate space epic celebrating American heroism, but instead, Philip Kaufman created a complex masterpiece that flopped spectacularly at the box office, while critics hailed it as one of the greatest films ever made. Based on Tom Wolfe's Pulitzer-winning book, the film follows the origins of NASA's space program from the daring test pilots like Chuck Yeager, who broke the sound barrier, to the Mercury 7 astronauts, who became national heroes tasked with beating the USSR in the space race, balancing spectacular aerial sequences with intimate character studies of men willing to risk everything for glory and country. What makes this production absolutely remarkable is how Kaufman managed to secure a massive $27 million budget to create an epic that was simultaneously a tribute to American courage and a satirical critique of government mythology and media manipulation, using groundbreaking practical effects and authentic locations to recreate the early days of space exploration with unprecedented realism. Behind the scenes, the film's nearly 3.5-hour runtime and cerebral approach to heroism made studio executives nervous about commercial appeal, leading to limited marketing support that contributed to its disastrous box office performance of just $21 million domestically. Critics, including Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, championed the film as a masterpiece, earning it 8 Academy Award nominations and 4 wins. But audiences stayed away in droves because they expected straightforward action, rather than Kaufman's nuanced exploration of courage, sacrifice, and the machinery of public relations. The film found its true audience through home video and television broadcasts, where space enthusiasts and serious film lovers discovered what many consider the definitive cinematic portrayal of America's early space program, cementing its status as a cult classic that influenced